Hello and welcome to lesson 9. Today's lesson is all about the cost of electricity. Obviously, everything we use costs money, and today we're going to look at exactly how much money your electricity bill is. Something that most of you probably don't even think of because your parents or guardians pay for it. When I went to university, I got a big shock because I realised for the first time how much money I have to spend on electricity. Up until that point, I'd never thought of it because my parents just paid the bill. So here's a section from my electricity bill. I've literally copy and pasted this directly from the bill I was sent in May this year. So this is for 3 months of my electricity use. So let's look at what all of these numbers mean and figure out how we got this cost of £99.31. So obviously the cost is here. So this is the cost for 3 months. And this here is the energy use. Now let's break it down. So we obviously pay for energy. So the company is measuring the amount of energy I use, and then it charges me based on that. So here it tells me that I pay 14.180 pence, this P stands for pence or pennies, per kWh. What does kWh mean? This is a unit of energy, and here we can see I've used 700.4 kilowatt hours, 700.4 units in 3 months. So if you get a calculator now and you do 700.4 times by 14.180, you should get 99.31. So really, this is actually quite simple. Once you understand what these funny letters mean, it's really simple. The amount of money I pay is the amount of energy I used times by the cost per unit of energy. However, the one slightly confusing thing is that the amount of energy is measured in this unit kWh, which is kilowatt hours. And that's what we're going to look at. So, energy transferred is power times time. This was looked at 2 lessons ago, I think. So remember that power is the rate of transfer of energy. So rearranging energy is power times time. Sometimes this is also work done. They mean the same thing. So usually we measure power in watts, time in seconds, and energy in joules. Here it is in simple form. But what if we're using large amounts of energy? So when I'm powering my home, I'm not really using lights or the fridge for seconds at a time. I'm using it for hours because I'll have my fridge on 24 hours a day, or I'll have my light on for 5 or 6 hours in the evening. So it doesn't really make sense to use seconds, it makes sense to use hours. And similarly, if I look at the power of things in my house, well, I'm not really using things that are 2 or 3 or 4 watts. That's actually really tiny. I'm using things that are kilowatts, so thousands of watts. So I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, to look around your house on the back of appliances and see what the power rating is. If you look on your kettle, it might be 2, 3 kilowatts, 3,000 watts. If you look on your microwave, I can see mine is 800 watts or 0.8 kilowatts. Your TV might be 100 or 200 watts. So we need to use different units to represent the large amounts of energy that we're using. So when we're looking at the cost, 1 unit of electrical energy is known as 1 kilowatt hour, and it's literally 1 kilowatt of power used for 1 hour. Okay, it's still power times time is energy, we're just changing the unit. So 1 unit of electrical energy is 1 kilowatt hour. I should say that this is really crucial to make a note of, and so is everything on this slide. So 1 kilowatt hour means 1,000 watts used for 1 hour. If you remember this, you can work everything else out and you're guaranteed 3, 4, 5 marks in almost every single exam. So Just to show you how much this is in joules, 1 kilowatt hour is obviously 1,000 watts used for 1 hour. That's 1,000 watts times by how many seconds in an hour, so 60 minutes and 60 seconds in each minute. So this means that 1 kilowatt hour is 3,600,000 joules. So it costs me about 14p for every 3.5 million joules of energy that I use, which in one sense is really cheap. But once you realize how much energy appliances actually use, you'll realize that 1 joule actually isn't that much energy. So how do we work out the cost? Well, as we said right at the start, it's really quite obvious. It's obviously the cost of 1 unit of electrical energy times by the number of units of energy that we use. So right back at the start, I showed you I used 700 units. It cost me 14p per unit, which gives me a total cost of £99. However, sometimes it might not be written as this. It might be written as number of kilowatt hours because they're expecting you to remember that a unit of energy is a kilowatt hour. So 1 kilowatt hour is 1 unit of energy. So you need to remember both of these formulas. They're exactly the same, but it's just two terms for the same thing. So let's look at some examples. Once we do a couple of examples, you'll see how easy this is, and you'll see how it's really easy to get loads of marks. So a TV is used for 3 hours each day. Its power rating is 500 watts. The cost of 1 unit of electricity is 15p. Work out how much it costs to use the TV. So, firstly, we need to work out the number of kilowatt hours used by the TV. So this is not hard at all. Firstly, we look at the watts and we make sure we turn it into kilowatts. So we divide by 1,000. So 500 watts is 0.5 kilowatts. We then need to work out how many hours we've got, which is easy. We've got 3 hours. We don't need to do any conversion here. So now the number of kilowatt hours is the number of hours times by the number of kilowatts, and 0.5 times 3 is 1.5 kilowatt hours. We know what 1 kilowatt hour costs. It's 15p. So we can write our equation out for cost. Number of units of energy, number of kilowatt hours times by the cost of 1 unit. The total cost is therefore 1.5 times 15p, which is 22.5p. So this is fairly accurate. So if you do use a TV for 3 hours a day, which is quite a lot of TV, you should be doing more physics. It probably will cost you about 20p. Something I never think of, but it all adds up. All right, example number 2. I'd suggest you pause the video and give this a go now on a piece of paper. So the question says a kettle is used for 15 minutes each day. Its power rating is 2,500 watts. The cost of 1 unit of electricity is 15p. Work out how much it costs to use the kettle. So step 1, how many kilowatt hours? So 2,500 watts, we divide by 1,000, that gives you 2.5 kilowatts. 15 minutes, well, this is not in hours, we need to convert it to hours. We know there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, so 15 minutes is 0.25 hours. So therefore, the number of kilowatt hours is these two numbers times together, 2.5 times 0.25, which is 0.625 kilowatt hours. And now we know that cost is obviously the number of kilowatt hours times by the cost. So we're going to write this equation down, put in our numbers, and we get our cost. Now, some of you will be complaining, sir, why do I have to write down 5 lines of working out for one calculation? Well, as with all maths and all physics and all science, if you take the time to write down everything here, you will understand what's going on. You will check to see if you've made mistakes, and you will get more marks. You might get working out marks, or you might just remember exactly how to do something. So always write this down. I know that it can be a little bit long to write down this every single time, but I promise you, you will get more marks. Every single student I've ever taught that does this does on average get 3 to 4 marks extra each exam paper they do, because they get method marks, they spot mistakes, and they correct mistakes. Right, one final example. So read this question now, pause the video, and complete it on a piece of paper. So step 1, if you need a hint, convert watts to kilowatts. So do this now. Step 2, take the minutes, convert it to hours. Step 3, work out the number of kilowatt hours you've used by doing the kilowatts times by the hours. Step 4, write down your equation for cost. Cost is number of kilowatt hours times by the cost of 1 unit. And step 5 is to, of course, work out the cost, number of kilowatt hours times the cost per kilowatt hour. So let's quickly write in some numbers, see if you got this right. So 1,500 is 1.5. 180 is 3 hours. So 1.5 times 3 is 4.5, which means the total cost is going to be 4.5 times by 15, which is 67.5p. Super easy if you take the time to write out all these steps, and this would easily be worth, like I said, 3, 4, 5 marks in an exam.